Welcome to the Speak English podcast. Listen, learn, and speak with confidence.
Picture a Friday night at like a packed, trendy bistro downtown. The bass from the music is just vibrating in your chest. A waiter rushes past your shoulder carrying a tray of flaming appetizers, and the people at the table next to you are practically shouting over the din.
Oh yeah, total sensory overload.
Right. You are handed a menu that is somehow 6 pages long, printed in a font that honestly requires a magnifying glass. If you're anything like me, your heart rate spikes just a little bit. It feels entirely chaotic.
Yeah, it really does.
It feels like an environment where anything could happen, where you have to read the vibe, improvise your moves, and just hope you don't step on anyone's toes.
And we naturally interpret that sensory overload as social unpredictability. I mean, we assume the interaction we're about to have with a stranger, the server will be just as wildly fluid and chaotic as the room itself.
Exactly. But, what if I told you that exact chaotic environment is actually running on a rigid, unbreakable algorithm? We are so thrilled to have you with us on this deep dive because today we are unpacking a framework that totally shatters the illusion of that social chaos.
We really are.
We're looking at a curriculum designed to teach basic A1 to B1 English. Specifically, how to order food at a restaurant. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, I already speak English. Why do I care about a beginner's guide to ordering a burger?
Right, which is a fair question.
But here's the fascinating part. It's funny how a simple beginner's guide inadvertently reveals the bizarre, unwritten rules of human psychology. This isn't just about learning verbs. It is a meticulous deconstruction of the universal social architecture of dining out.
It really forces us to look at the scaffolding holding up the building rather than just, admiring the paint job. What's fascinating here is what becomes incredibly clear when you look at how we teach language to absolute beginners.
Yeah, it lays it all bare.
Exactly. Human interactions, especially commercial ones in public spaces, are not organic. They are highly predictable behavioral loops. By stripping away all the slang, the jokes, and the local flavor, we can see exactly how language is deployed as a specialized tool to eliminate anxiety, draw strict boundaries, and forge a temporary, highly functional social contract between two complete strangers.
So instead of a chaotic dance floor, we are actually looking at a perfectly mapped grid. And that's the journey we are taking you on today. We aren't going to just read through a vocabulary list, I promise.
No, definitely not.
We are going to explore the psychology of why predictability is our ultimate comfort blanket. We're going to dissect the microscopic, almost invisible power dynamics hidden inside polite phrasing. We'll examine the intense biological vulnerability of communicating what you literally cannot eat.
Which is a huge deal.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
And we'll even get into the regional geopolitics of trying to pay and leave.
Yeah.
It's a wild look at something you probably did yesterday without giving it a second thought.
And to really ground this, we have to start with a rather bold psychological claim this foundational approach makes. The core premise taught to beginners is that ordering food is inherently a low-anxiety exchange, simply because it can be broken down step by step.
Okay, let's unpack this. I have to stop right there and push back.
Go for it.
Because when I look at the reality of dining out, low anxiety is like the last phrase that comes to mind. Let's go back to that packed bistro I mentioned earlier. Or, honestly, put yourself in the shoes of someone who just arrived in a new country, where they don't know the cultural norms, they don't recognize the dishes, and there's a line of impatient locals forming behind them at a counter.
Right, the pressure is on.
That feels like a nightmare scenario for a panic attack. How can anyone categorize that as a low-anxiety environment?
Well, because we have to separate environmental stress from cognitive load.
Okay, tell me more about that.
You are describing environmental stress, loud noises, time pressure, unfamiliar visuals. Your brain is reacting to the physical space. But the psychological anxiety of human interaction, the fear of the social exchange itself, doesn't stem from the volume of the music.
Right.
It stems from the terror of unpredictability. It's the evolutionary dread of not knowing what the other human is going to do next, especially when that human is the gatekeeper to your food.
So the panic isn't about the noisy room, it's about the fear of the unknown variable.
Yeah.
The fear of getting to the front of that line and having the cashier ask a question you just never anticipated.
Precisely. In cognitive psychology, we talk a lot about decision fatigue and cognitive load. When you are forced to constantly assess a fluid, unpredictable situation, your brain is burning immense amounts of energy.
That's exhausting.
It really is. For a language learner or just, an introvert on a busy Friday night, trying to predict the future while processing a chaotic present is paralyzing. But when you view the interaction as a guaranteed, unbreakable sequence of steps, that immense cognitive load vanishes.
It's like navigating a massive, intimidating subway system in a foreign city. You walk underground, the signs are in an alphabet you don't read, trains are screaming past, thousands of people are bumping into you, you are sweating, you're completely overwhelmed.
We've all been there.
But then you look down at your phone and you pull up a little colored map. The map tells you, take the red line 2 stops, then transfer to the blue line. The noise hasn't changed, the crowds haven't changed, but your shoulders immediately drop. The relief is instant.
Yes.
Why? Because you found the hidden script.
Yeah.
You are insulated from the chaos because you know exactly what your part in the play is.
That is the exact mechanism at work here. By providing a step-by-step blueprint, we are handing out that subway map. We are stripping away the illusion that the restaurant experience offers infinite, chaotic choices. It doesn't.
It really doesn't, does it?
No. You arrive, you negotiate a trade of currency for sustenance, you consume, you leave. It is a track. And once you realize you're on a train ride, not some off-road adventure, the anxiety just evaporates. The underlying structure of the restaurant transaction is identical worldwide, which means the social algorithm is universally applicable.
That concept of the algorithm perfectly explains how we initiate this whole process. When you finally sit down and the server approaches, the machine turns on. The server provides the prompt, something like, "Are you ready to order?" Or, "What can I get for you today?"
Right. The opening input.
And suddenly, it's your turn to provide an input. But we don't just throw words at them. We use very specific architectural phrasing to respond. The framework breaks this down into 2 distinct linguistic paths. You have the declarative path, I'll have, and you have the conditional path, could I.
And examining those 2 paths reveals a brilliant layer of behavioral engineering. Let's deconstruct the first option, the declarative, I'll have. This is taught as the classic foolproof choice that works in literally any setting, from a neighborhood diner to a Michelin-starred tasting menu.
It's everywhere.
Exactly. The grammatical elegance here is profound. I will have. You are utilizing the declarative future tense.
You're declaring a future reality. I will have the chicken. It's going to happen.
Exactly. You are speaking an event into existence. You aren't asking a question, and you aren't seeking permission. The server asked a functional question to advance the commercial trade, and you are fulfilling your contractual obligation by stating the parameters. Yet, despite being a direct command, it is never perceived as aggressive or rude in this context. It is perceived as purely competent. It leaves zero room for ambiguity. The linguistic clutter is just gone.
I was thinking about this like a wardrobe choice. The phrase, "I'll have," operates like a perfectly tailored classic black suit. It is rigid, it is formal, and it binds you to a certain level of decorum. It operates almost like a legal contract between you and the establishment.
I love that analogy.
And because it's a black suit, you can wear it absolutely anywhere and be respected. It works at a gala, it works at a boardroom, and if you wear it to a dive bar, you might look slightly overdressed, but nobody is going to kick you out. It is functionally invincible.
The black suit is a great way to look at it because it really highlights the formality of the contract. The noun, the food itself, slots directly into the phrase, "I'll have the grilled salmon with a side salad, please." The modularity is seamless. You declare the primary desire, you link a modifier using a preposition, and then you apply the essential social lubricant at the very end.
Please. Right, because without the word please, the black suit turns into a dictator's uniform. "I will have the grilled salmon." You suddenly sound like a Roman emperor demanding tribute from a conquered province.
Yeah, you really do. The please softens the raw declaration. But, as you noted, there is a second path. And if I'll have is the formal black suit. The alternative phrase, "Could I get," operates under an entirely different psychological framework.
Yeah, this is the denim jacket of ordering. It's what you throw on when you're walking into a local coffee shop or a fast casual burrito place. It's comfortable, it's relaxed. But I really want to unpack why it feels so much more relaxed. What is the mechanism making "could I get" feel friendlier than "I'll have"?
What's fascinating here is that it comes down to the sociology of conditional modal verbs. Let's look closely at the words "could I." You aren't using the declarative future anymore. You aren't stating what will happen. You are phrasing your desire as a hypothetical question.
Interesting.
You are literally asking, in some possible universe, would it be within your ability to provide me with this item?
Which is funny, because of course they can. They're standing in front of an espresso machine wearing an apron. Providing the item is literally the only reason either of you are in the building.
Exactly. But by phrasing it as a conditional question, you are playing a very subtle game of social humility. You are artificially granting the server agency. You are pretending, just for a microsecond, that they have the power to say no.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
In a fast casual environment, the physical counter acts as a barrier, and the interaction is usually over in 45 seconds.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury of building a rapport over an hour-long multi-course meal. The language itself has to do all the heavy lifting to establish warmth immediately.
So by offering them this fake agency, this hypothetical ability to refuse you, you are treating them less like a food dispensing machine and more like an equal. The denim jacket phrase, "Could I get a large iced coffee?" please operates less like a rigid legal contract and more like a favor between neighbors.
Right.
It leaves a tiny psychological door open for refusal, which ironically forces the barista to feel more accommodated and respected.
It flattens the hierarchy. The power dynamic shifts from master and servant to a collaborative, egalitarian exchange. It is a brilliant piece of subconscious social engineering that native speakers execute instantly without ever realizing it.
We just intuitively know the vibe. You don't walk into a drive-thru, lean out your car window, and boom, I will have the double cheeseburger. It sounds sociopathic.
It really does.
But here's the catch. What happens when neither the black suit nor the denim jacket can save you? Not because you use the wrong grammar, but because you simply cannot compute the menu. The algorithm demands an input, it demands a food choice, and you just don't have one.
This represents a critical failure point in the transaction. When the cognitive load exceeds the individual's capacity, the system stalls. And this is where the framework introduces the linguistic tactic of strategic surrender.
The pivot to asking for recommendations. Phrases like, "What would you recommend?" or "What do you suggest?" When I was looking at how this is taught, I couldn't help but marvel at the pure linguistic judo of it.
It is quite clever.
It's presented as a way to take the pressure off reading an unfamiliar menu, but it's doing so much more than that underneath the surface.
If we look at this through the lens of Barry Schwartz's paradox of choice, modern dining has become an exercise in overwhelming variables. A diner menu with 100 items isn't a luxury. It is a cognitive tax.
A huge tax.
Now, multiply that tax by the burden of operating in a second language, or simply operating at the end of a grueling work week when your prefrontal cortex is completely depleted. The menu transforms from a list of delights into a hostile wall of text.
That's a test you didn't study for. You just wanted calories, and now you have to make a binding decision between 15 different aiolis.
Right. So the question, what do you recommend, acts as a cognitive triage. It is a purposeful relinquishing of autonomy. But the paradox here is that by surrendering control, the customer actually gains power.
Oh, that's interesting.
You are co-opting the expertise of the server. You are forcing them to step out of the passive transactional role of an order taker and demanding they step into the active collaborative role of a curator. You are outsourcing your mental labor.
You're literally making your problem their problem. It's genius. And when you look at how this plays out in a real conversation, it unlocks an incredible amount of hidden value. Take a standard response from a server. Our house favorite is the pasta carbonara. It's made fresh today.
Yes.
If you just ordered blindly off the menu, you would never get that depth of information.
The phrasing of that server response is dense with sociological markers. First, the term house favorite. Instantly, the server is offering the customer a sense of tribal belonging. They are imparting insider knowledge.
Like you're in the club.
Exactly. By accepting the house favorite, the customer is no longer just purchasing calories. They are participating in the specific culture of that establishment. They are doing it right.
And then there's the kicker. It's made fresh today. The static printed menu just says pasta carbonara, $18. The menu cannot tell you what is happening in the kitchen at this exact moment. But by deploying the strategic surrender, the customer unlocked dynamic data.
They did.
They found out what the chef is actively proud of today. It shifts the entire interaction from a blind guess into an informed, guided experience.
It really highlights how conversational prompts act as keys to locked doors. The restaurant environment is full of invisible information: what ingredients are best today, what the chef excels at, what dishes are overpriced. The static menu hides this. The dynamic human interaction, initiated by a humble request for help, reviews it.
But surrendering control to seek pleasure is one thing. Sometimes giving up control isn't an option because the stakes are entirely biological. Which brings us to the moment. The polite illusion of the dining experience violently collides with the reality of human frailty. I'm talking about navigating dietary restrictions and allergies.
This is undoubtedly the most culturally and sociologically complex phase of the entire transaction.
Okay, let's unpack this part because here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at how beginners are taught to handle this, there is a massive cultural assumption baked right in. The framework insists that asking about ingredients or requesting modifications is completely standard and expected.
Right, it encourages them to just state it.
It tells the learner, speak up directly, the staff handles this routinely. But let's pause and really think about the vulnerability of that moment. If you come from a culture where you eat exactly what the host serves you, or where questioning a chef's preparation is seen as a profound insult, the idea of looking a stranger in the eye and saying, "I have a severe peanut allergy," is terrifying.
Absolutely.
You're exposing a biological weakness to someone you don't know in a culture you don't fully understand. Is it genuinely as easy as the framework implies?
What's fascinating here is that it is a profound collision of cultural values. What is actually being taught here goes far beyond English vocabulary. It is a crash course in the hyper-individualism of Western, and specifically English-speaking, commercial culture. It is an assurance that in this specific socioeconomic ecosystem, the customer's bodily autonomy and personal preference fundamentally supersedes the chef's artistic vision. And they certainly supersede the restaurant's desire for standardized efficiency.
It's the ultimate permission slip to be the squeaky wheel. You're allowed to disrupt the train ride.
Yes, but only if you use the precise linguistic tools designed to mitigate the friction of that disruption. Let's analyze how this is structured to protect both the customer and the restaurant. The approach separates this into two distinct phases. First, the objective fact-finding mission. Does this contain dairy?
Right, that's just a yes or no question. It's a clinical inquiry about the chemical makeup of the soup.
It is entirely objective, but it is immediately followed by a phrase that completely alters the legal and social reality of the table. Is this safe for me?
Oh, well, safe. That is a heavy, heavy word to drop in the middle of a casual Friday night dinner.
It is a loaded term because it instantly strips away the performative, polite veneer of the dining experience. We are no longer talking about flavor profiles or house favorites. We have introduced the raw concept of physical survival.
Yeah, things just got very real.
By asking, "Is this safe for me?" the customer is establishing a hard boundary and simultaneously shifting the burden of liability onto the establishment. They are forcing the server to pause the algorithm and acknowledge the biological stakes.
And all the linguistic padding we talked about earlier, the conditional verbs, the could I possibly, all of that vanishes. When it comes to allergies, the tone shifts from friendly and relaxed to utterly direct and clear. Excuse me, because the soup contained nuts. I have a severe peanut allergy. There's no beating around the bush.
Because ambiguity in this specific moment carries the threat of physical harm. Politeness is a luxury of safety. When safety is threatened, clarity must become the absolute priority. But what is equally fascinating is how we handle modifications that aren't life-threatening but are still deeply personal, dietary preferences.
Right? Things like I'm vegetarian or I'm gluten-free. The way this is navigated is so strategic. The example given for this scenario is, I'm vegetarian. Do you have any options without meat in the main course section?
I want to focus intently on the geographical bounding of that sentence in the main course section. That is a masterclass in optimizing human communication and managing someone else's cognitive load.
Because if you just say, I'm vegetarian, what can I eat? You are throwing a massive burden onto the server.
Exactly. You would be demanding that the server mentally scan the entire multi-page menu, from appetizers to side dishes to desserts, filter out all the meat, and recite a comprehensive list back to you. It is highly inefficient and creates immediate friction.
It really does.
Instead, the phrasing acts like a spotlight rather than a floodlight.
Right.
By directing the server's attention to a specific physical location on the menu, the main course section, you narrow the parameters of the search.
You are asserting your right to individual customization, but you are doing it in a way that aggressively respects the pace and cognitive limits of the service worker. You're pulling a specific lever on the machine, rather than asking them to rebuild the machine from scratch. It is hyper-efficient empathy.
It acknowledges the governing law of the environment. While customization is your right, efficiency is the currency of the realm. If you can make your disruption efficient, it will be accommodated gladly.
So you've survived the gauntlet. You negotiated the black suit of formal ordering. You successfully outsourced your choices to the server. You drew your biological boundaries, shifted the liability, and optimized the menu search. The food finally arrives. You take a bite. And suddenly we enter a phase of the meal that I find endlessly amusing. It's the maintenance phase. The mid-meal check.
Ah, yes. Yeah. The required algorithmic checkpoint.
Yes. The server materializes out of nowhere and asks, how is everything tasting? And you respond, everything is great, thank you. Now we have to pause and dissect this ritual because on its face, it is completely absurd. Why does this step exist? Because let's be totally honest. If the soup was lukewarm or the chicken was slightly dry, would a beginner language learner, or honestly, would you actually look the server in the eye and say, actually, the culinary execution here is subpar?
The overwhelming statistical probability is no, you would not.
Never. I would rather eat a napkin than cause a scene. I just want to chew my slightly dry chicken in peace.
And acknowledging that reality forces us to understand what is actually happening in this moment. We turn to the sociologist Irving Goffman and his theories on the presentation of self. This mid-meal check is not a genuine culinary critique.
Right.
The server is not acting as an unbiased auditor of the chef's performance, and you are not acting as a food critic. This exchange is an act of performative maintenance. It is a closed-loop social contract.
It's a formalized vibe check.
Exactly. The restaurant, as a system, requires a recorded milestone that the transaction is proceeding without catastrophic failure. They are offering an opportunity for course correction if there is a fly in your soup. This is the designated moment to reveal it. But primarily, they are seeking validation. They need you to verbally confirm that the initial trade of money for food is still valid.
And think about the physical comedy of when this usually happens. Think about how many times you've had a mouthful of food when the server asks this. It is a universal law of the universe that the server will ask, how is everything tasting? At the exact millisecond, you have taken a massive bite of a dinner roll.
It never fails.
You literally cannot speak. Your mouth is full of bread. So what do we all do? We execute the universal pantomime of satisfaction. You widen your eyes to simulate delight, you nod your head frantically, you give a robust thumbs up, and you muffle out a sound that vaguely resembles It's a hilarious, shared human experience.
It is the ultimate social reflex, and providing learners with the exact standardized phrase, everything is great, thank you, gives them the linguistic escape hatch they need.
The password out.
Yes. It is the password required to close the loop, satisfy the algorithm's checkpoint, and allow the server to leave the table. Because the ultimate goal of the restaurant algorithm is not endless, deep conversation with the staff. The goal is to consume the calories and conclude the business.
Which naturally guides us toward the exit strategy. The meal is over, the plates are cleared, and it is time to execute the final and surprisingly complex phase of the transaction, paying and leaving. And this is where the framework introduces a concept that strikes fear into the hearts of language learners everywhere: linguistic geopolitics.
The sudden introduction of arbitrary regional variations. This is traditionally where anxiety spikes again. A learner has mastered the grammar, they've successfully ordered, they survived the allergy check, but now they are faced with geographical vocabulary borders.
It really is like invisible borders drawn right onto the restaurant table. The goal is simple. Ask for the paper that tells you how much money you owe. But the vocabulary depends entirely on your GPS coordinates.
Right.
If you are sitting in a diner in the United States or Canada, the standard protocol is to ask for the check. But if you are in the United Kingdom, Australia, or really any European English-speaking context, the standard is the bill. I try to imagine the sheer paralyzing panic a learner must feel trying to memorize this. They're sitting in a restaurant in Toronto, sweating, thinking, oh no, is it bill or check here? If I say the wrong one, will they understand me? Am I going to be trapped in this restaurant forever washing dishes because I use British English in North America?
That panic is a hallmark of how we often misunderstand communication. We tend to view vocabulary as a series of rigid pass-fail passwords. We think if we input the wrong string of letters, the system will crash and access will be denied.
Like a bad computer code.
Exactly. But there is a deeply reassuring reality embedded in how this is taught. While highlighting the regional differences, the core takeaway is always, both terms are universally understood worldwide.
Which is such a profound sigh of relief.
It is a critical lesson in how human communication actually functions in the real world. Perfect regional vocabulary is entirely secondary to clear structural intent. Whether you look at the server and say, "Could we get the check, please?" or you say, "May I have the bill, please?" the communication is going to succeed with 100% accuracy. Why? Because you are operating within a highly predictable sequence.
The algorithm knows where you are in the process.
Precisely. By step 5 of the meal, the server expects you to initiate the financial transaction. The context is doing 90% of the heavy lifting. The specific noun you choose to employ, whether it's check or bill, is almost irrelevant compared to the structural intent of the request. The algorithm is robust enough to handle a slight geographical input error without crashing.
That is so freeing. It proves that the context is the safety net. But paying the money isn't the only part of the exit strategy. Often, you have food left over. Or maybe you never sat down in the first place, and you just want to take food away with you. This introduces another set of regional modifiers that are endlessly fascinating. Requesting takeout.
The terminology here shifts again. In the US, the modifier is to go. In the UK and Commonwealth nations, it becomes takeaway or to take out.
What I love about how these phrases work is how modular and versatile they are. You can use them in totally different scenarios, but they achieve the exact same goal. For example, you are at the end of a huge sit-down dinner, there's half a pizza left, and you ask, "Could I get a box for this to go?" Or you walk into a fast food joint, you never intend to sit down, and you order at the register. "Could I get a cheeseburger and fries to go, please?" It acts like an extension code that you just tack onto the end of any transaction.
Linguistically, to go functions as a directional modifier that fundamentally alters the nature of the commercial exchange. When you order food at a restaurant, you are essentially renting space in their dining room for a specific duration. You are paying for the atmosphere, the plates, the seating.
Right.
But when you append to go to your order, you are voiding the rental agreement. You are strictly purchasing goods for export.
You are taking their culinary product and extending it into your own domain. You are dragging the restaurant out into the chaotic outside world.
Exactly. And ensuring a learner knows exactly how to append this modifier gracefully is the final key to mastering the environment. It allows them to traverse the boundary between the controlled algorithm of the restaurant and the uncontrolled reality outside the doors.
We have put every piece of this puzzle under a microscope today. We've examined the rigid black suit of formal ordering, the egalitarian denim jacket of conditional requests. We've analyzed the strategic surrender of asking for advice, the biological boundary setting of allergies, the performative thumbs up of the mid-meal check, and the geopolitical nuances of asking for the check. We have looked at all these pieces individually. But there is a massive danger in looking at them in isolation. If you just memorize these phrases, you are going to feel incredibly fragmented.
It is the inherent flaw of the traditional phrasebook. Handing someone a list of 50 translated sentences is not teaching them how to have a conversation. It is just handing them a pile of bricks and expecting them to know how to build a house. They have the materials, but they lack the blueprint. They lack the mortar that holds the bricks together.
And that brings us to the ultimate synthesis of our deep dive today. So what does this all mean? It's the antidote to that fragmentation. It's what ties this entire philosophy together, the 5-step master sequence. When you step back and look at the whole picture, the overarching philosophy is clear. Learning isolated phrases is like learning random notes on a piano. But this 5-step chronological sequence, this is the actual song.
The sequence is the engine that drives the predictability. It moves from arrival to ordering to questions to the meal and finally to wrap up. And the reason understanding this sequence is so utterly vital is because it grants the human brain its most powerful cognitive tool, anticipation.
Because if you know exactly what is coming next, you can never truly be caught off guard.
Anticipation neutralizes anxiety. Let's trace how this flowchart actually protects the individual. Step 1. Arrival. The server initiates the contract. Table for 2. The customer confirms, yes, please. The social loop is open. We transition smoothly to step 2. Placing the order. The server prompts, are you ready?
And here comes the architecture.
Right. The customer deploys their polite architecture. They might mix the structures perfectly. I'll have the steak, and could I get a glass of water?
The black suit for the main course, the denim jacket for the beverage.
Oh.
Masterful execution.
Then we hit step 3. Dietary checks and special requests. Does this contain dairy? I am allergic. Now, why is the concept of anticipation so critical right here at step 3? If you learn phrases in isolation without understanding the sequence, a server suddenly asking, "Do you have any food allergies?" might feel like an aggressive interrogation out of nowhere.
Yeah, like, why are you asking me medical questions?
It feels invasive. But if you know that step 3 is an established, predictable checkpoint in the algorithm, you aren't startled. You expect the friction. And because you expect the friction, it ceases to be friction.
Just the next station on the train track. You pass the ordering station, and now you are pulling into the allergy station. You have your ticket ready.
Exactly. Then step 4, the mid-meal check. The affirmation of the ongoing contract. How is everything? Great, thank you. And finally, step 5, wrapping up. Could we get the bill, please? And could we get this to go? The chronological map is complete, the loop is closed, the transaction is successfully resolved.
It is incredibly satisfying to see it laid out from start to finish like that. It all clicks into place. But what struck me most deeply when I looked at the summary of this entire process was how it charts not just the words being used, but the tone required to use them. It reads exactly like stage directions for a theater actor. It proves that the learner's emotional posture has to shift dynamically throughout this 5-step sequence.
The modulation of tone is where the true mastery of the social algorithm lies.
It's brilliant. It starts in step 2 with ordering, where the required tone is polite, standard. You're establishing basic goodwill. Then, if you need advice, the tone must shift to open, inquisitive. You are yielding control and projecting curiosity. Then we hit dietary restrictions, and the tone drops entirely into direct, clear.
No more small talk.
Exactly. You are dropping the performative warmth to protect your biological boundaries. And finally, for payment, it shifts back to polite, standard, or practical, clear. You're concluding the business efficiently. When you look at it this way, you realize you aren't just learning how to speak English. You're learning how to actively modulate your public persona to fit the rapidly evolving demands of a social algorithm.
What you are describing is the performative emotional labor required to exist in a public commercial space. To successfully navigate a restaurant, a human being must be simultaneously agreeable, fiercely curious, biologically assertive, and financially efficient, all in the span of about 45 minutes.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
And for a language learner, they are doing all of this while actively translating a foreign tongue in their head. It is a monumental cognitive achievement, but it is made entirely possible by trusting the predictability of the 5-step sequence. The structure bears the weight so the individual doesn't have to.
It really forces you to step back and appreciate the invisible scaffolding that is holding up our everyday lives. Which brings us to our final takeaway. What we have unpacked today is that a seemingly simple beginner's guide to ordering food is not just a vocabulary list. It is a brilliant, hyper-efficient psychological map. It takes a scenario that is practically bursting with sensory chaos, potential social missteps, and complex dietary vulnerabilities, and it wrestles all of that into a rigid, low-anxiety structure. It proves that if you have the right script, the terrifying, chaotic dance floor is actually just a very manageable, predictable grid.
It is a profound testament to human ingenuity. We haven't just constructed language to express our internal abstract thoughts. We have engineered language to build incredibly sturdy, safe bridges between strangers. We use it to turn the unknown into the known. And that leads to a thought I want to leave lingering today, building purely on the foundational premise this framework has laid out for us. If we can prove that an entire immensely complex social interaction with all of its life-threatening dietary vulnerabilities, its arbitrary regional quirks, and its strict financial transactions can be perfectly, cleanly mapped into 5 highly predictable steps, well, it begs a rather large question.
Oh, I love where this is going.
What other daily interactions in your life are you currently treating as chaotic, stressful, and entirely spontaneous when they are actually just scripted 5-step sequences that you simply haven't mapped out yet?
Wow. Think about that. Think about that the next time you walk into a terrifying networking event where you don't know anyone, or a high-stakes parent-teacher conference, or even a nerve-wracking first date. Are you letting your heart rate spike over the illusion of chaos? Or do you just need to step back and find the hidden script? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to listen for the hidden script the next time you are out in the world, especially the next time you dine out. Pay attention to the prompts, watch the subtle shifts in tone, and take a moment to appreciate the beautiful, predictable algorithm of a shared meal. We will catch you next time.